Okay, thank you. One of the things that I hope to cover is just that, just to sort of talk a bit about where we're at. One of the things that I hope is not going to happen is that you're going to start throwing all those balls at me at the end of this. So I'm glad they're soft, but I'm glad they're bright yellow so I can see them clearly and I can duck. But nonetheless, it's an interesting addition to our day today. And again, I'm not even sure who provided them for us, but thank you, I think. But exactly, just keep them on your table. You can take them home, but don't bring them this way. What I wanted to talk about a bit is exactly that, just how we as DFO have been looking at the Oceans Act. And there's a clause in the Oceans Act, and I've got it here in front of me. It's Clause 29 for those who really want to read that sort of thing. I can read it if you want. It's really boring, but nonetheless, have a look at it. It talks about those couple of words that were mentioned earlier about collaboration. It talks about the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans taking the lead, having to facilitate, working with other federal departments and boards and things like that, working with the province, working with First Nations, working with the public and those who are interested in this type of a field. So a number of the things that came up yesterday that we heard was, how does this fit? How does this all work together? How is it going to work in a fair and open and transparent manner? And that is just what I'm wanting to give, sort of just a little bit of a 5-minute snapshot as to what it is that we have done so far, how it fits, and what it is that we're trying to accomplish through this forum and today. So as we start to look at this, and we start to look at the obligations that the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans have, one of the first things that came forward to us is that there are a lot of different federal departments that have a role on oceans. There's Fisheries and Oceans, there's Environment Canada, there's Parks Canada, there's Natural Resources Canada, there's Transport Canada, there's Industry Canada, there's Western Economic Diversification, and I can go on. There's a lot of different federal departments that have a role to play. So what we did within DFO, we formed what's called a Pacific Interdepartmental Oceans Committee. It's basically a committee of federal departments that we can work together in a coordinated fashion so that the activities that the federal department is doing is at least we communicate, we can talk about it, and we can look at our mandates and things like that. And so we've got a steering committee. Paul Sprout, the RDG, chairs that. We have a number of different RDGs that are on that committee. And so what it is that we're trying to do is to, again, get that coordination. And then at a working level, we also have, at the staff level, we have a working committee that helps to blend and coordinate those activities. The next thing, not next in sequence, but just the other area that we needed to work on is how do we relate with the province? The province has got jurisdiction, they've got authorities, they've got mandates. How do we do that? So a few years back, a memorandum of understanding was developed with the province on how, as a Canada-BC MOU on implementing Canada's ocean strategy, if you want the long title. But basically what it does, it says, how do we coordinate? How do we as a federal department, a federal government, and the provincial government work with each other? So, again, we've signed this MOU. We've got an Oceans Coordinating Committee. We've got subcommittees that fall under that. We look at issues that are in common. We talk about issues that maybe aren't common, but we want to inform the other side. And we're about to form a higher level steering committee. So the names of the committees are a little bit different than the federal Pacific Interdepartmental, but basically form the same kind of function. The other area that is very important that we needed to address is the relationship with First Nations. Now, Canada's Constitution says that we've got a special relationship with First Nations. The Supreme Court tell us we've got a special relationship with First Nations. So how do we articulate that? How do we ensure that we're talking on the same page? So last December, we signed a memorandum of understanding with First Nations on how it is that we're going to communicate, how we're going to work together. And again, there's a steering committee, there's a working group committee, which this time we called it a secretariat. Again, and then we've got subcommittees under that looking at specific issues and things like that. One of them was, organizing this forum and things like that. Again, it's trying to look at how do we engage, how do we work together. But when you go back to the Oceans Act, and for obvious reasons, that is simply not enough. We need to figure out how do we work with industry? How do we work with environmental organizations? How do we work with coastal communities? How do we deal with the commercial fishing sector, the recreational sector, the tourism sector, the shipping, the cruise ship industry? How do we work with all the different people who live in the area, who get their livelihood from the oceans? How do we deal with those industries that would be impacted? And so that is what we're trying to do here. That is what we're trying to do by bringing all of you together here so we can have that discussion. What is an engagement strategy? How is it that you want to be engaged in what it is that we're going to be developing in a way that you feel is meaningful, in a way that you feel that your voices can be heard, in a way that, so whatever products come out of this process at the end of the day, that you can see yourselves in them, that you can look at the results, the recommendations, the options, or whatever it is that's in those pieces of paper at the end of the day, that you can say, yes, we support that. Because it's very, very critically important that once whatever comes out of this process, people can see that they've had a part to play in it and that they can accept and adopt and endorse those recommendations. But we haven't created that engagement strategy yet. We've done it on the federal, we've done it on the provincial, we've done it with First Nations, but we haven't done it with the rest of the people here in this room. And so that is why I think that there is some questioning that was happening yesterday. Where do we fit? What's our role? How is this transparent? What's going on behind the scenes that we're not aware of? And believe me, there isn't anything going on behind the scenes that you're not aware of because we haven't had that discussion. And so that's what we're trying to do today here. So as we go into our engagement strategy and our discussions later on through the day, what we're hoping to hear from you is, how do you want to be engaged? What is that place that's meaningful for you? What is that place that you can not only have your voices heard, but you know that your voices have been heard? And that's what we're trying to figure out today. So I just want to take a couple of minutes at the start of this just to sort of set that context, because I know that there's been some questions as to what it is that we're doing and what the First Nation MOU is all about and things like that. But I just want to sort of set that kind of a context so that maybe it's a little bit clearer, maybe a bit helpful. And no one threw a ball at me, so that's good. So, anyway, I'll just leave it at that. I don't know if...
Is that good? Good. Thanks, Mel. Thanks, Mel. If questions come up about that throughout the day, you're going to be here? You're not going home or anything? No. Mel will be here and others to answer those jurisdictional questions or questions of power to decide and interrelationship between some of the bodies and groups that Mel talked about, particularly as we begin to sharpen up the discussion of stakeholder engagement. So what's a stakeholder? What does it mean to be engaged? What does it mean to work together? And try to bring that all into perspective.